Namaste and hello everyone. My name is Shivika and welcome to another episode on Careers Beyond Degree. But this is not just another episode because I have with me an expert who is going to tell you and talk to you about the immigration white paper, something that has been discussed for the last couple of weeks and something that everyone is worried about how it affects them, how it affects international students, what will really happen to the ILR requirements for skilled worker visas, and how is it going to affect the Innovator Founder Visa route. So if you're someone who's been having all these questions in the past ever since the white paper was released, then you have to watch this podcast up until the end. And if you still have any questions, don't forget to write them in the comment section below. But for now, stay tuned and keep watching. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on Careers Beyond Degree. It's a pleasure to have you. So, thank you for taking the time out. And I'm pretty sure everyone will be waiting for this particular podcast because there's so much frenzy around what's going on with the immigration proposals and whatnot. But before we get deeper into that, I'd love you to please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
Sure. My name's Chris Stias. I'm an immigration solicitor. I work in the UK. I have an office in London, and I've been a solicitor for over 23 years, and I've always practiced in immigration. So it's something that I'm really interested in, and it's my passion to help people in immigration and get through the regulations. I think the Home Office don't make it easy for people, so I try to be there to help people navigate it as best they can. I have my own company, Lawyery .co, and we're a team of solicitors. There's 5 of us, and we all specialize in immigration. So if you need any help, we do online appointments. First one always free.
Amazing. It's 2 people who love helping other people navigate life in the UK. So this is going to be a good one.
So the perfect synergy.
Absolutely, yes. So before we delve into the list of questions that I have in front of me, I would love to ask you that what's the most frequently asked question to you about immigration?
At the moment, it's all about the white paper. The government announced a new white paper, which is basically its plans for immigration. It hasn't come in yet, but they're setting out what their plans are, and it's generally bad for immigration. It's a tightening up. The government, this government and the previous government, are obsessed with cutting down the numbers of migrants. Even though this country needs migrants and needs to have an open door policy, the problem is politically they feel threatened by the Reform Party, and so unfortunately they're trying to pander to those type of political views.
I wouldn't call it a coincidence because that was definitely one of the first questions I wanted to ask you. That let's address the elephant in the room. Before we get into the details of the white paper, something I'd love for you to please explain to people that what is a white paper, because a lot of people started considering them as rules and they were like, oh, I'm leaving the country, this has come and that has come and this applies to me and whatnot. But it's important to really simplify that the white paper is only a proposal. So what, according to you, is the white paper and how do you think it's going to implement anyone?
So yeah, an online a white paper is exactly as you said. It's a proposal. So basically, the government are setting out what their plans are in advance to let everybody know. And the reason they do that is they have to go through a consultation period. They have to debate it, what the rules changes are going to be, and talk to various stakeholders, and see that, you know, if their ideas pass the test, you know, if they pass muster. And one of the interesting things about this government, though, is that this government does have quite a healthy majority in Parliament. So when they talk about a white paper coming in, and will it come in, won't it come in, I think the chances are more likely that it will come in because of the you know the fact that they don't need another party to agree with them in order to get this through, as long as their own party doesn't rebel against them.
For those of you, yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah. So my opinion is that most of the proposals will come through.
Wow. Does that answer all my questions? No, not at all. No, but for those of who are thinking that this is going to apply to them, when do you think is it going to come in place, if at all it does? And do you think it's going to apply retrospectively in terms of like the skilled worker, the ILR, and other proposals on the white paper?
Well, I mean, I think that we will start seeing some of the changes coming in around about autumn time, so September, October time. I think that
Right.
because it will take a while to be discussed and obviously to be implemented. They've still got to implement the rule changes, and they haven't done that yet. And so that's when I would expect it, but it's just speculation, really, based on experience.
Yeah.
And from talking to other immigration lawyers, I belong to an organization called ILPA, the Immigration Law Practitioners Association. So it's basically, we brief each other and we talk to the government if we can, and try to figure out the best way through the policy and which is going to happen, what's not going to happen. So, for example, later on today, I'm joining one of the ILPA groups, the Economic Migration Group,
Oh,
where they will be talking exactly about this and debating between ourselves when we think the changes are going to happen and the most likely ones. Um, so it's always good when you're a lawyer to have these type of connections with other fellow lawyers. We're not all just in competition with each other. We work together to serve the public, and so we try to do that. Um, and also, it's better to, when you're lobbying the government, if you don't like something, it's better to have to do that, as part of a group rather than just individually.
absolutely. And something that you mentioned in the beginning, that the UK clearly needs migrants. So
Hmm.
why do you think all these suggestions are coming? I mean, you and I spoke about this at the event as well, that why is it exactly coming? And I think a lot of people kind of disagree with that, but it's out there. So if you can clarify on the points, why is the government so stressed about cutting down on migration, and why exactly have the numbers been so high in the past?
Well, I honestly think the government doesn't really care about migration, but what they do care about is staying in power. And
Right.
the British public are being stoked up by right wing parties, and what they don't want is to have to deal with right wing parties and more MPs from those parties or councillors from those parties getting involved in the political process. So what they're trying to do is try to appease the right wing element of the public by talking about immigration. Um, and I have been doing some research about why Labour, especially, are um, seem to be have turned their opinion on this, because I was surprised that they would be so anti-migrant, and it seems to me that this is a long-term tactic that Labour, especially Keir Starmer, wants eventually to rejoin the European Union. So I
Right.
think that this is a tactic to try and put the pressure on people, saying, if we can't rely on foreign workers, if you don't want people coming from outside of Europe to the UK, then we'll cut that route out. But eventually, you're going to have to accept that we have to have European nationals coming, because we do have an aging population. We do have a need for workers, and we were filling that need before Brexit from Europe.
Right.
And politically, Labour is more attached to the idea of Europe than the Conservatives. So I think that's where, for example, we this happened just as we were negotiating the youth mobility with Europe, and
Right.
suddenly we're stopping care workers coming in, but at the same time we're going to let hundreds of thousands of youth young people from Europe to come to the UK, and I think they're hoping that that's going to fill the gap.
Right. And do you think that this is going to affect people who might have been interested to move to the UK sometime end of this year or in the coming years?
I think definitely, if you're because one of the major changes is the fact that it's concentrating on lower skilled migration. So care workers, the care worker visa is apparently going to be scrapped completely, um, and for skilled workers, they're hiring the job level, the equivalency to graduate level rather than A level. So I think that a lot of people who would have filled those jobs, I think they said something like 120 jobs are going to go off the list. So
Wow.
it's definitely going to have a major effect.
Right. And how is it going to affect the students and graduates who are in university at the moment and people who've just graduated, like January intake or the previous September intake?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to affect them significantly because obviously the graduate visa that you have, some people still call it post-study work visa,
Yeah.
that was for 2 years, allowing you to stay in the UK, to find a job and to work without any permissions from the Home Office. And then the intention was at the end of your 2 years, you've either done enough and you want to go back home, or if you want to stay in the UK, you found an employer to sponsor you as a skilled worker, or you move to set up your own business through the Innovator Founder route. But it's hard enough for graduates at the moment to navigate that change at the end of the 2 years. But one of the proposals of the white paper is to cut that down to only 18 months rather than the 2 years. So it's going to be more of a scramble, I think. 18 months is nothing really.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be really hard for students to navigate the change. They can still, after their studies, stay here, but it's going to be accelerated. There's no time to rest on your laurels.
Yeah. No, something that I would love to also know from you is a lot of students have been wondering that the white paper kind of clearly states that they want to stop people coming into the UK with low skills but are open to welcoming people with
Mhm.
high skills. Is that going to like still keep doors open for people who are highly skilled across the world?
Areas the government have mentioned, they mentioned it only briefly, but they did say that the innovator founder route, they want to make it easier for students um, to get into that route. But they didn't go into any detail of how they're going to make it easier. But certainly, I think that's welcome because at the
Yeah.
moment, I think it's quite hard to get an innovative founder visa, and uh, certainly for students, especially they're just starting off um, their lives, their working lives at least. It's really hard to prove you have the experience when all you have is academic
Yeah.
behind you, and a lot of students get refused that way. So anything they can do to make it easier for students to move on to that route, I think is good.
So what I wanted to really know from you is do you think that the Innovator Founder Visa is going to be the route for international students to switch to a business visa, or is the government thinking or considering like a new route for students to like have in between? If you remember, there was the Tier 1 graduate entrepreneur visa before this, then there was a startup visa before one could jump into the Tier 1 entrepreneur visa. So is there something like that going to come back into the picture?
I think it will. I think what I tend to find with the UK government is that they stop something, then they realise they made a mistake, but they don't want to say they've made a mistake. So instead, they bring something very similar back in, but with a new name.
Yeah.
So, so I think if we maybe expect an innovator startup visa, maybe something like that
Wow.
to
Yeah.
come in, and it looks like it's going to be introduced after consultation with the endorsing bodies and with the migration advisory committee. So I don't know when that will be. It might be next year before we get something like that. But it certainly is something that the government have mentioned, and um, I think it's heading that way. But whether it's quick enough for this year's cohorts, I don't know. Maybe next year's.
Also, there's not a possibility that it's going to come down this year at all.
I don't think so because it wasn't fully developed yet. It was literally just a line in the white paper,
Right.
not even a chapter really. So I think
Hmm.
that's going to take a bit longer unless they can accelerate it. But
Right.
I think that they're concentrating on closing down certain routes first, and then they'll reopen maybe next year.
Well, whilst we're on the topic of skills and migrant workers, I would also like to ask you, and something all my friends have been asking me since the day the white paper was published was, is the
Hmm.
is the ILR route going to be 10 years now for the skilled workers instead of the 5 years?
That's the big question. Uh, Initially, when the white paper came out, everybody thought that there would be a transitional arrangement. So normally, when the Home Office changed the rules, people who are already here benefit from the old rules, and it's only new entrants who have to use the new rules. But the government seem to have been indicating that that's actually not going to be the case. Obviously, we don't know exactly because it hasn't been published into law yet. But it seems that the intentions of the government are that if you don't have ILR by the time the new law comes in, then it's going to go across the board to everybody. But obviously, there are some people, then you can't do anything about that. You're not ready to apply for ILR now, so you can't apply for ILR. But obviously, if somebody has been delaying their ILR or thinking, well, I'll do it next year, then I think if you can do ILR now, just to be on the safe side.
So, for instance, if somebody's completing 10 years, no, actually 5 years on their skilled worker visa sometime in February of 2026, is that rule going to apply to them? And then they have to wait another 5 years?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I mean, we can't say for definite, but it seems that that's what the government want to do. Whether or not they can, there'll be people who challenge this in the court and say, look, I came in under a certain expectation and it's wrong for you to change it. Especially they can go back and give examples of previous changes where the government had a transitional arrangement. So the argument would be, why haven't you had a transitional arrangement this time? But I think it would be quite costly to challenge it if it does come in. Obviously, for employers as well, it's a big deal because that means they have to continue to issue costs and to pay fees for their workers for potentially double the time than they thought they would have to do. So you can see that the government benefit from this because people have to keep on paying their fees for another 5 years on top of what they've already done. So I think that's one of the reasons for it. But also, I read an article that there was a paper about use of state resources, for example, like NHS. And I think it was a Dutch paper that was translated, and the Labour Party got hold of it. And apparently there was some analysis there about migrants who've been in the country, not necessarily UK, but in any country for less than 5 years, and then they have the rights to access state funds for the rest of their lives after that. That the benefit suddenly cost benefit analysis, it goes down because they've contributed for 5 years, but then the rest of their life. So that's why the government are potentially looking to double it to sort of make that cost benefit better, more balanced. But it was very much just based on this one report that seems to have become fashionable. And I haven't read the report, but I've read analysis saying that this seems to have been passed around government ministers before this announcement came out.
Oh, right. I'd love to read it.
It's quite interesting to see what has influenced them.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, me too.
Also, another
if
thing.
I get a copy, I'll send it over to you.
Please do. Yes, yeah. I'd love to go through it. What really influenced this decision? Because all my friends and everybody around me is so tensed about this. So it's kind of really shaken people who thought they're so close to it now. They've spent so much time working and gave everything, but now it's going to be 5 more years.
There may well be some sort of carve-outs. For example, the government still very much believes in the Innovator Founder route. So they may carve that out and still make that a route that you get settlement easier than under other routes. Because they believe that innovators, benefit, the country more than other migrants potentially, because you're creating jobs and bringing new ideas to the country. But again, we don't know what the carve-outs would be. We know that they said that some routes will. The only one they guaranteed was the partner route. If you're a partner of a British national, they've said that one won't change. Right. But that's the only one they've guaranteed won't change. But I would imagine that Innovator would be up there, maybe.
Yeah, I think so too, because there's been a lot of emphasis on keeping highly skilled people in the country, bringing in global talent into the country. So I think that's going to be the focus of the final rules, and ultimately it's going to help people who are highly skilled to move to the UK. They're going to make the route easier rather, I find it quite hard right now for people when they ask me how do we navigate the innovator founder, something we will come to in a few minutes. But then I
Mhm.
think people who have the skills, who have big ideas and vision, will still be welcome to the country and will still have a way to come here and work here and start something over here.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you totally on that. The UK is never going to fully close the route.
Yeah.
They're just going to tinker with the rules and the conditions of it. That's what's going to change.
And something that you also said before was employers will be rethinking about investing money into their employees, and because they'll have to pay double and whatnot. Do you think international students and professionals or graduates or people who are on the skilled worker visas, if they want to switch to another visa or if they're looking for the jobs, employers will be hesitant to now hire them because of the salary thresholds increasing and because of the rules changing? Will that really affect people finding jobs and landing a good job?
I think that at the top of the market, it won't affect it at all because at the end of the day, if a big company needs somebody and they want to recruit, they will do whatever they can to recruit that person. They've got the money to do it. I think it's more around the medium-sized businesses, small businesses, where that budget is more stretched, and maybe they don't make plans for 10 years. They make plans for 5 or 2 years ahead,
Yeah,
and it's a big commitment to take on someone knowing that you're going to have to sponsor them for 10 years rather than 5.
right.
So I think
Also, the
we might
investment.
see people still being sponsored. Yeah, the investment as well. Getting a sponsor license is not cheap,
Yeah,
and then maintaining that license and paying for costs, paying for immigration skills charge. This all mounts up,
yeah.
and but I'm still seeing small companies do it because they're finding it hard to recruit in their sector, and they've got this graduate there who's been really good for the last 2 years, and they want to keep them.
I have been consuming a lot of content regarding this as well, and this is one of the final questions in this segment. But I'd love to know from you as well. Do you think the UK in itself is really prepared to stop the migrants and then train their own workforce, or people or youngsters within the UK? Do you think they're ready to learn those skills and do those jobs that the migrants have been doing for so many years, according to you?
No, 100% not. And I don't think the government is serious about it either. Maybe they do
Mhm.
want to try and upskill. Maybe, they want the unemployed people to take these jobs, but at the end of the day, we have a safety net, and it's really hard to encourage people to do really unpleasant jobs because they know they've got this safety net there.
Yeah.
And I think the reality of the situation, as I said earlier, is that the government are hoping that these youth mobility workers from Europe that they're just opening the door for will be taking these jobs on a temporary basis to allow them at least to weather the political storm, and then potentially whichever way we go, if the government is elected again in a few years' time, do we have closer ties with Europe, or do we start opening the door again for lower skilled workers when they don't have Nigel Farage looking over their shoulder.
Right. Coming to the Innovator Founder Visa, something I get asked all the time. And I would like to start with this one thing I read on your profile where you mentioned that you got Innovator Founder Visa to a graduate within a month's time. And his or her visa was expiring, I think, between 30 to 40 days. How did that happen? What did you do? What magic did you do then? And how did that person get the Innovator Founder
Well,
Visa?
I have to say that it wasn't magic, unfortunately. But what it was a really good idea that
Right.
they had. Yeah. Um, so basically, it's a client. I can't reveal of the idea due to confidentiality,
Yeah.
but he came to me. He had been looking. I think he'd been looking to move to skilled worker, and that's why he'd left it so late. But that
Right.
had fallen through, and he had this idea that he'd been working on. So he was in AI anyway. I think his degree was in that, and he had this idea, and he had a working prototype already. So it's like not like he came to me with a blank slate. So what I helped him is I helped him accelerate that and put together a business plan for the endorsing body that really highlighted what the innovation was, how it could grow, and what, putting him central to it, that he was the key person for this, that he wasn't going to just outsource his business. And I think a lot of students who come to me, they have a great idea, but they say, well, okay, I've got a degree in this, but I'll hire this person to do this, I'll hire this other person to do this. And the innovator endorsing bodies don't like that. They want the person who is coming up with the idea to be the key person in the company, the key driver of the idea. And that is what's really important. And that's what is the difference, I think, between getting an endorsement quite fast, or having to have a back and forth, when they have to come back to you with, well, what about this? What about that? Have you thought about this? Who's going to do this? When are you going to hire this person? So if you can say, well, I can do this myself, then that makes a huge difference.
Right.
So that's how we were able to do it. We were able to put it in. We did, when we put the endorsement application in, we did tell them, made it very transparent that was about to run out.
Right.
It doesn't mean the endorser this visa from outside of the UK. So I've certainly had feedback sometimes when someone is applying late, where they say, well, we can't guarantee this. Your client needs to maybe get ready to leave the country and then come back in if we do endorse them.
Okay.
But in this case, because it was such a good idea and we didn't have much of a pushback, I think it was very clear to the endorsing body that this was a good idea as well, and that this person was really competent, and they were doing something that they were passionate about and they had the skills for. That's what made it possible to get the endorsing. And obviously, once you got the endorsement, then you can put an application into the Home Office. And as long as you put that application in before your visa runs out, it doesn't matter if your visa then runs out. It takes, even if it takes a bit longer, you're allowed to stay in the UK while that's processing. So
how
getting
long?
the endorsement is the important thing.
Yes, absolutely. How long did the entire application time take? I mean, after the endorsement application was submitted to the time the person received the endorsement?
I think we had a month to get the endorsement,
Okay.
which we did get, literally, I think, in the 4th week. And then we put the application in, but because it was such a good endorsement, the Home Office didn't sit on it long. I think about 3 weeks at the Home Office.
Oh, lovely.
So all in all, it was fast. That was the fastest I've done it. Yeah.
No, I was
That's why I put
amazed
it
to
on a
read as well.
website, because it's
Yeah, I was
yeah,
amazed to see it as well, because
yeah.
if anyone asks me, I'm like, it takes about good 2 to 3 months from the day you decide you want to apply for the Innovator Founder. You have an idea, you write your business plan, and then everything else happens. There's back and forth conversations. Because I remember someone reached out to me saying that I've been in conversation with the endorsing body for the past 1.5 months since I submitted my first business plan. I'm like, what? That's a long time. So you've
And
been in this
exactly, it
process.
goes back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah, so this
yeah. So
person
I
had
think
been
that
in it for a long
it
time.
helps. It helps to have someone who knows the process, give you the advice. And I always recommend to someone who's applying for something like the Innovator Founder to go and see an expert lawyer, not just any
Yeah.
lawyer, but someone who's an expert in the area and can help you out and understand what the endorsers are looking for.
Something that I've been asked a lot as well is how to choose the right endorsing body. So this is one question that I'd want you to answer to us, please, because at that point you must have also questioned which endorsing body to go for. Which one would you say is the best to go to when you're applying for an endorsement?
Well, I mean, I shouldn't recommend one above
Yeah.
another.
Yes.
But what I would say is it's pretty obvious if you go to the websites. Um, there's one endorsing body, I feel, that really goes out of its way to explain the whole process and to have resources up there, videos, PDFs, explanations of what they're looking for. So I think you can sort of almost just by looking at the websites, if the endorsing body is a one-page website and you don't really understand the process from that website, then that's not the one for you. The one that I always use is the one that make it very easy. Everything is there. If you follow their instructions, you should get endorsed.
And does it matter what
So
industry
because
or
they
business
tell
idea
you
is in?
upfront what they want.
Right. And does it matter what industry or business idea is in? And do certain, I mean, there's only three to be honest, but do one of them give more preference to certain ideas from certain industries? Is there something like that?
I don't think so. Not for the innovator founder. I haven't found that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, the very fact that it's the innovator founder means that they're always going to get more applicants based on the tech industry
Yeah.
because of that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be tech enabled. The important thing to know is that it's an innovation. I think a lot of people make the mistake that if I add AI to something, or if I say that I'm going to make it into an app, then I'm going to get sponsored as an innovator. And I think they're a bit weary of seeing so many of those type of things. So the reality is just to look at the market and say, well, what can I do? What can I change in this market, in this industry that hasn't been done? And it doesn't have to necessarily rely 100% on tech. It's good to have tech in there in the mix to
Yeah.
modernize, but a great idea is much better.
For someone who wants to apply for the Innovator Founder today, um, how do they assess their idea as being innovative, scalable, and viable? So, if you can explain these three terms to a newbie who wants to apply for this visa, and how do they assess that, yes, my idea is innovative? Because I've had ideas come to me saying this is very innovative, but when I look at it, I'm like, no, it's not. But the founder is so convinced that the idea is innovative.
Passionate
How do
about it.
they? So
Mm,
passionate about it. We're in our own bubbles at that time that, no, I know this is
mm.
innovative. How can you say no to it? So, how do they know that, no, it's not
Well, I
innovative?
think innovation itself, you have to try and find something else out there. So
Yeah.
you come up with an idea, then you have to, hit the research button and find out what other people are doing. So, for example, I might say, okay, well, I'm a lawyer and I do online appointments, so that's my innovation. But then, if I look at other law firms, you go to other law firm websites, you see, well, actually, a lot of law firms are now doing online appointments. So, where's my innovation gone? It might have been an innovation 5 years ago when I first started doing it, but I've lost the edge now. Other people have started doing it. So, being the first, being you have to have that competitor analysis both in the UK and outside of the UK because they do look at both. So it's not enough even to say, well, there's this great idea that I saw in Dubai, but they're not doing it in the UK because that's still not your idea. You're just taking someone else's idea and bringing it to a new market. So really, you have to be honest with yourself and look out there because otherwise, it's going to be very easy for the Home Office or the endorsing body to come back to you and say, well, wait a minute, there's this company doing it already. How come you say you're claiming that's your innovation? So you've got to really put your idea to the side and say, well, let's look out what my competitors are doing both in the UK and outside of the UK. And you've got to be honest with yourself that A, you have an innovation, and B, that your innovation actually adds something to the process
Right.
for the customer. And that's the other thing, it has to help the customer. It has to be something the market wants,
And
and that then that your competitor analysis then goes to market analysis. Have you been testing this idea on groups of people or in social media? How do you know that people want this idea?
right. What would the
So yeah,
prerequisites?
I think the more data you have, the better.
Yeah. And what about scalability and viability? How does one measure that?
Viability is more about your ability. So if you can show that I've run businesses before, or I'm an expert in this area, this is what I did my master's degree on, or you can show you have contacts in the industry. So you have to show what are you bringing it? Is it viable? So it might be a great idea, but is it a viable idea with you running it? That's what you've got to convince them.
Right.
So I think that a lot of people don't quite get that.
I love when you said viability is your ability, which is kind of what they want to see. Are you the right person to start this business or not?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just but I think a lot of people thought of the idea of having a phone that could do everything, but it was Apple really who who brought it to the market. And it was just they were the right company to do it. And are you that right company? Are you that right founder?
Yeah, and scalability. How does one define scalability over the next 3 years of their business idea?
I think scalability. What I find is a lot of applicants come to me and they just have these numbers and it looks great on paper and to prove it. And I think what the endorsers are looking for is the reality of the situation. If you say you're going to have 1 million sales in the first year, well, how are you going to have that 1 million sales? Do you even have enough money to buy the stock to
Yeah,
sell 1 million, or to set up the website and have the engineers and the staff? So how are you going to sell 1 million if you don't even have a website yet? So
yeah,
you've got to put everything together and show that it's realistic and give realistic figures. And I think that's really important because one of the things, again, that a lot of people don't realize is that your targets for getting ILR are based on the figures you give. So
yes,
when you have yes, you might get endorsed at the start, but then when you have your follow-up meetings at 12 months, at 24 months, and at the end of the period, have you met your targets that you set yourself in your original business plan? So
yeah.
keep it realistic, even though you might want to impress them, but you might be overreaching, and then they'll say, "Well, this is not realistic scalability."
Right. And how does one create a business plan?
Well, I mean, online, just using Word, Excel. I try to keep it as basic as possible.
Right.
But the important thing is to, again, the endorsing bodies often, give you ideas. This is what we're expecting to see. So if you pay attention to what the endorsing bodies and what the Home Office guidance says as well, that you can build a business plan from that. So you can say, well, I've got this idea. This is what they're looking for, and you can build it based on that.
And it
And
doesn't
it's
have to
it's so
be
obviously, online you can find many templates.
and it doesn't have to be like 100-page
So that there
document
is a
or something like
traditional
that.
way of doing business plans. I think it can end up being that, just because there are lots. Once you start looking into it, there's so much you can put into a business plan. You have to show it twice. You have to show it to the endorsing body to get the endorsement. But I'm finding more and more nowadays that when you apply for your visa, the Home Office are not just happy with the endorsement letter. They will want to see the business plan as well. Um, they want to see what business plan was shown to the endorsing body to get that endorsement. So you've got
Also,
to look at it from two perspectives. That um, I've got to impress the endorsing body, but I've also got to impress the Home Office as well.
so is the Home Office also checking the business plans once you've submitted your endorsement, you've been endorsed, and after that, the Home Office can ask you for the business plan again?
100% yes.
Okay.
And I'm finding that more and more now.
Right.
So that's a word of warning there, that
Hmm.
you've got to look at it from both perspectives.
Right. And what are the prerequisites for someone who wants to start a business? So, like, I get asked, do I need to register my company? Do I need to have a business plan? No, of course, you need to have a business plan, but do I need to have a prototype ready? And do I need to, get some customers trading? What is the right, where is the right stage where you say, okay, I'm ready to apply now?
I think the main thing that you have to get, and that most people don't get, is the research side, the market research side. Um, Often people come to me with a product or an idea, or even a nearly completed business plan, and say, "This is what I want to submit." And the first thing I say, "Well, how do you know this is a good product? How do you know that people want this?" And they
Right.
seem to think that just because they think it's a good idea, they want it, or some of their friends want it, but they haven't tested it on the public. And that's what the Home Office and the endorsing body are looking for. They want you to test it on the British public.
Right. And how do you recommend one should do their market research, and how much market research is enough before they apply?
I don't think there's ever enough market research for, especially if you're a student on your own and you don't have a huge budget. Um, so do as much market research as you can, and many different ways of doing it. So, for example, if you've got a social media following, you can use that as your market research. Put ideas out there. see what response you get. You can do the traditional market research where you stand there with a clipboard and stop people on the street. Or you can do other things like, get together a group of people in a room and do a presentation to them and then get follow-up questions. So there's many ways to do it. You could even hire a company to do it for you, but that's where you get, that's more professional. That's more down the road, maybe.
Right.
But I think as an individual founder, there's a lot of ways you can do it without having to spend a lot of money.
And one last question in this segment. Do you think it's hard for students to get an Innovator Founder Visa, keeping in mind that they've just finished their bachelor's and master's and now they want to start a business? So without having that experience, which you mentioned earlier, are they okay to still apply if they have the vision and the skills and they have like a great idea that they want to start in the UK?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think you need to leverage what you've got. So, for example, if you've been to a great uni and you've done a good course, you need to leverage that in there.
Right.
If you've done work experience or you have a family business, you can leverage that. If you have contacts and you say, well, I might not be in this business, but I've got a lot of contacts in this business, and you can mention them and show how they've
Hmm.
helped you. And what you can also show is you can mentorship. There's nothing wrong with showing that you have a mentor. So you can say, well, I'm going to be mentored by this person who is really good at doing this.
Right.
Um, so you don't have to show that you're going to do everything yourself. You're going to be involved in the business and you're going to be running it, but it doesn't mean you need to have all of that experience yourself, as long as you're getting it from somewhere.
Right. I think we've kind of discussed the entire innovator founder route in a way where anyone can understand. But I'd also love to know from you, how does Lawyery come into the picture if somebody wants to apply, and what services do you offer if someone wants to go to this route?
Well, what we offer is, we're experienced solicitors, so we know what the Home Office are looking for. We know what the rules are. We know what the procedure is. We also have relationships with um, uh, other innovators who've done it before. So we can use our experience from that, and we attend industry functions and get chances to talk to endorsing bodies and get an idea of what they're looking for as well. So it's really the fact that we're in this system already, and we're giving you our experience. So we will help you. We will give you our advice and our input about how to change your business plan if we don't like the way it's structured. We won't write your business plan for you, but we will certainly give you guidance and mentoring on that. Then we also do the application forms online. We make sure that everything is done in a timely manner so that you don't, your visa doesn't run out.
Yeah.
And we deal with anything that comes up. So, for example, if there's any pushback from the endorsing body, any pushback from the Home Office, we can help you deal with those questions.
Right. Amazing. As we close this podcast, something that I also get questioned a lot is the global talent visa. And I don't think that that's very well explained online. So, for anyone who wants to apply for that, can you please simplify the global talent visa? And also, how does one assess they qualify for it? Because it's just not clear online.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough one, the global talent. I've done a few applications that have been successful, but I've also had people come to me on that, wanting to go on that route, and I've convinced them it's more appropriate to move to a different route as well. Um, it's because it depends. They have different endorsing. This one is different for different sectors. They have different endorsing bodies for different sectors, and there's different procedures to go through depending on which endorsing body you go through. And what I found is that the main thing is, if you come to see an expert like Lawyery, what we will do is we will go to that endorsing body. We will, look at what the requirements are. We will go through your CV with you, through your experiences, through your education, through your references, and we will make sure, that this is the right fit for you. So we give a pre-consultation before any application is made. So it's not like we're going to just say, okay, let's take the application, let's make it, and then, oh, it didn't work. We should know before we even submit it that it's going to work.
Right. So, is that something that an applicant can also find out? by
They could, they
themselves?
could potentially, if they understand the guidance from the Home Office and the endorsing body. It's all out there, but I don't think it's user friendly. That's the main problem with it.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
that's the
so
reason.
that's the where the lawyer comes in, because we're used to how they phrase things, and we can explain to you, actually they didn't mean that. This is what they meant.
Right. But at what stage does one consider themselves as a global talent? I was recently reached out by someone who had like good 5, 7 years of experience working in corporate. Does that person qualify? I mean, how do you know that you're close to this visa criteria?
I think you have to. It's not dependent on age or experience, really. It depends
Right.
if you stand out from the crowd. And you've
Hmm.
again, you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. You could be a founder who is 21 years old, but they've sold their business, for 10 million or 20 million. I think there is actually a requirement. It has to be above a certain amount of money that you sold your business for.
Right.
Um, or you could be a singer who has won awards or been nominated for awards. Um, so it doesn't depend on age at all. But for example, sometimes it does. For example, I'm doing one now for a professor,
Right.
um, and so we're relying on the professor's long career and academic ability, etc. All the papers they've published. Um, so it depends. You've got to assess it. If you come to me and say, "Look, this is my CV. This is what I've achieved in my life," I'll normally be able to tell you if you qualify or not.
Right. Got it. I think because the guidance doesn't state really clearly about who can qualify. Yes, you need to get an endorsement, but it doesn't clarify as to who it's for. So that can make things very confusing for someone who's thinking to apply for it. But I guess reaching out to a
Mhm.
solicitor, somebody who's experienced like yourself, an expert in this, who's seen multiple applications, can just look at it and say, yes, you qualify. Why don't you give it a shot? Or no, you don't. You still need to keep working.
Exactly, and one of the important things to remember is that solicitors are business people. They want to make money.
Yeah.
So just be careful who you approach. Make sure they're an
Right.
expert in the area, and they're not just going to take your case on to make your money out of you. Look for this sign: ethical immigration advice. It means that we have a code of ethics, and that we're definitely not going to just take your money and run, but that we will actually analyze your case and give you some advice about the viability of your application.
That was a much needed disclaimer. Also, the global talent visa kind of differentiates between two, which is the potential and the leader.
Yeah, exactly. So there is some scope there for people who are starting out. But again, it depends on what you've done. If you've just graduated and that's all you have, then the likelihood is you still won't qualify for the potential.
Right, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Are there any final words from your end that you would like everyone to know? International students, professionals, graduates, people who want to apply for business visas, something in general that you want to tell
I
them?
think the main thing I want people to know is don't panic. The UK still is open for business for the right applications, and don't give up on your hopes. If you want to stay in the UK or want to come to the UK, reach out, speak to a professional, and hopefully we can find something within the rules for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. This has been very, very useful. And I'm glad that we could, talk and simplify so many things about the white paper, about the Innovator Founder Visa, and about all the proposals that have come into the white paper as well. So thank you so much for
Indeed,
that.
yeah. And thank you for having me, Shiv. It was my pleasure.